Good evening. I'd like to reconvene regular session at 7:05 p.m. Do I need a motion to do this? No. Okay. So we're good. So we will start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance and then taking remain standing for a moment of silence in honor of our servicemen and women. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Right. Approval of the meeting minutes. I'd like to see if anybody's willing to make a motion to approve the following sets of minutes of the October 20th closed session minutes, the October 2022 work session minutes, the November 1st open session, and the November 1st closed session minutes.
Excuse me, Mayor.
Yes.
I did not have an opportunity to read these minutes, and could we have more time? Or what do you want? I just don't feel comfortable voting on something I haven't read.
Okay, well, has everybody else read them? Everybody else feel comfortable? I'm happy to move forward with the vote if everybody else is comfortable. I mean, if it's something that you, I'm also happy to.
I just don't want to vote on something I haven't read.
Right, no,
Abstain.
you can abstain, and the rest of us can move forward if you're
Okay.
comfortable with that. Okay. Were there any questions about the minutes? No? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion, please. May I have a second, please? Second. Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Please note that Councilwoman.
Abstain.
Yes. Resolutions, consent agenda. So here we have ask for motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda. These are numbers 186-2022 through number 200-2022. Just want to highlight a couple of things here before we look at these. There were in resolution number 193-2022. This is the resolution to authorize the transfers in the 2022 budget. I just wanted to highlight at least one thing. You know, our operating expense for legal is $25,000 higher than what we anticipated. This has to do with a lawsuit that the city's been involved in. The city attorney is petitioning the court in order to recover the city's legal fees because we feel this lawsuit is frivolous. So that number hopefully will change in our favor. We've got about a 50-50 chance according to Mr. Opal. So I just wanted to highlight that particular one because that always catches people's eyes. A couple of other things I would just note on resolution number 194-2022, this change order for the library. This is for beams that have rotted away and were not visible at the time of the initial assessment. And then a couple of other things. Resolution number 196-2022. This is a resolution to authorize a change order for Suburban Consulting Engineers for post-Ida damage projects in the amount of $4,600. This is for 4 stormwater outfalls that were damaged up on Phillips Barber Road,
Yeah.
Alexander Ave. They were not previously included in our initial IDA contract, which was back in May. So this work includes some topographical mapping and surveys and technical specifications to get that work done, which is actually being done this week. And then the other one I would just highlight as well is resolution number 197-2022. This resolution would authorize a change order for Suburban Consulting Engineers for the USDA NRCS watershed protection program, not to exceed $30,000, $30,100. This basically effectively broke out the work into different sections. So there was the Swan Creek section south of or kind of west of Curly Lane, and then we had originally bid it out, or we had originally done the project with West Amwell all in one project, and it was cumbersome for the engineers and also required separate bids. We had to go out for another bid on the Quarry Street job. So anyway, this is the result of kind of breaking that down into two different jobs. And I would just note that it resulted in a contract for a fee less than $180,000 below their estimates. So, doing this made a lot of sense because it was able to really kind of take this out. And the Quarry Street job came in much less than we thought it was going to. So that's just a little bit of background on that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm confused. So we're giving somebody more money, but the overall project is less money.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So the overall project was 180. That came in $180,000 less than their estimate, but it cost $30,000 to separate out the jobs into distinct jobs.
I have just one question.
Yeah.
I'll just point out one thing, 194. The door transfers cover this extra expense.
This
The extra expenses.
no. Yes. Are you talking about the ordinance, the original ordinance from which we ran out in that ordinance. So we are going to,
So does our current, you're making these transfers, so does the current budget cover this?
the current,
Right, that's what you're asking.
Okay,
Yeah.
so some of it's from the bond and some of it is from a line item in the library budget.
right,
So some of it is coming actual from a bond ordinance and the other is coming from taxes.
Well, the current bond ordinance that we use to do that,
Yes.
up to
Mhm.
whatever we spend.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. If there are no other questions or,
Just one little comment, and we may have an answer. Yeah, go ahead.
200 second recital, there's a placeholder to insert the statutory. It's NJAC 5:30-15.
yeah, I have that on mine.
The second whereas was missing.
Oh,
It's not a statutory, it's a regulatory.
Right.
catch up. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, can I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, that carries. The next is resolution number 202-2022. A resolution to authorize a 9-month extension of time to comply with the flood damage prevention ordinance for the American Legion, 320 North Union Street, block 1003, lot 14, permit number 2199214. This is necessary for the American Legion. It's one of the city's polling places. They can have an extension on the flood damage prevention due to issues they're having with supply chain, basically receiving supplies of the floodgates. So they are just waiting for those. They have everything else in order. And so we approve the resolution.
It looks good, by the way. Just,
It does look
Yeah.
good. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of volunteer labor went into that. I think all volunteer labor. So, are there any other questions about this? All right, will someone make a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And may I have a motion to approve the bills list, please?
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinances in first reading and introduction. First is ordinance number 32-2022. This is an ordinance to amend the salary and wage ordinances to include the following new positions: an MS4 Tier A coordinator, public works part-time. So as we've been talking about the reassignment to the Tier A, we are starting to look at those requirements, and they are going to be numerous, and they are going to require additional hours that we do not have kind of in place already. So we're just looking at creating a range here. I do not know, I'm not sure how we're gonna kind of play this out, but it's important to have this in place so that when we do kind of start to compile the work and understand better the requirements that we're able to handle the additional work there. So, and obviously we'll come back to the council with, whatever recommendations we have in terms of what our best estimates are for a position and what that would look like in terms of time, potential salary range.
There seems to be a typo in the first range, it's either 1,000 or $1.
Sorry, it's 1,000.
That's
And just one other thing, the employee or the person who is the coordinator has to be certified unless there's already done that. It's quite cumbersome. What was it, a 3-day course? that you
Yeah,
had to take?
and it was expensive as well.
$650.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's gonna be a lot of work. Are there any other questions about this? Hearing none, I would ask for motion to introduce ordinance number 32-2022 on first reading. The public hearing scheduled for December 15th.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries unanimously. Ordinance number 33-2022. This is to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 7, to include a handicap parking space in front of 142 South Main Street, requested by Pauline Rocco. This is a request for the installation of a handicap parking space. Lieutenant Brown and the Public Works have been asked to look at this request. I think they're both fine with it. And we would just please note that while these spaces can be put in certain locations, you're not allowed to say it's my space. It's basically anybody who's got a handicap parking space. So we just it's just good policy to kind of note that. So if you've got another handicapped neighbor on your block, you may end up sharing the space. Are there any questions about this? Okay. Have a motion, please.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Next is ordinance number 34-2022. This ordinance of the city of Lambertville reauthorizes the sale of city-owned real property no longer necessary for a public purpose, and establishing the procedures therefore concerning block 1070, lot 13 on the tax maps of the city, more commonly known as 150 Swan Street.
Mayor, if I may.
Please.
When Mayor Noah and I were at the league, we did speak with Max Span, who is they are a realtor, and they also auction off property. They auctioned when we owned the parking lot in North Franklin and Church Street, they did that. So there's just one amendment that we'd like to add to this before it's adopted, and it would be to section 2B. And it would say the mayor is hereby authorized to take any and all actions necessary, including but not limited to engaging a licensed real estate broker or auctioneer to conduct the public auction in accordance with the requirements of the local lands and building law. And so that would be the only, the change to it, and that would, I think, would make this probably more visible rather than us just putting a sign up and sending letters out and putting a notice in the legal section.
But if we do that,
Mhm.
and we still have the right to reject bids and, or do we? have to go
I
to
think
the-
yes, it just, all it authorizes us is to use a broker or an auction house to help sell the property,
Right.
which means that we would incur fees. But if you sell the property, you incur fees, you're still getting money, so you could still reject
And we got no bids.
nothing. And I sent letters out to everybody.
And
Well,
it would be-
that-
it would be the council's decision whether or not to reject bids to it. That would be in, we have to retain that power for the city in accordance with the local lands and building law.
Well, that, quite frankly, that was my concern when we started this, is there's no motivation for a realtor to bring anyone to the property because they don't make money for their services. So this is either, so can we, well, we'll get them up to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta get it going and then in January revisit, what avenue do you wanna go down?
Well, it's not a bad idea because there's no motivation for anyone that's a license, as a client that wants to do something.
And it might be something we wanna consider for a couple of the other properties that we have.
I think we should do it for wide enough, we're gonna change this, that we can apply that to the other properties we have as well. Thank you, Cindy.
I think that we'd have to do an ordinance for each property we want to sell. So, we can consider that moving forward to make sure that that language is in all of the other ordinances.
Okay.
So is there a motion to introduce ordinance number 34-2022 as amended? Public hearing scheduled for December 15th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Motion carries. Ordinance number 35-2022. We're not going to consider this tonight. I hoped that I was going to be able to kind of tweak the final details. Ordinance number 35-2022. And I just didn't get to a couple of key things that I wanted to this week with this, and so we're going to consider this at the next meeting. Okay. The next is ordinance number 36-2022. This ordinance will amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, amending chapter 7, section 7 through 8, loading zones. This would add a loading zone on Bridge Street on the southwest side of Bridge and the Main Street corner. So this space that I'm referring to is actually has been a metered space at one time, but the meter has not been there for at least a year that I know of. You know, there are several businesses on that corner, including the Byway Gardens, which has a very high volume of traffic. They have had some informal arrangements with the gas station, but you know, it's very hard to park over there, right? And they've had this business in particular has had a difficult time with you know, getting their stock in and getting their customers to safely get across the street with pots of flowers. And I think that it's a good idea, not just for this particular business, but for all the businesses on the south side of the street, and also for businesses like Zinc that may have occasionally you know, need to get more stock in, or you know. So
For loading, could it be loading of customers too?
yes, yeah, it would just be a loading zone, and it would just be during what do we say, 9 to 5, Cindy? I forget what the
Yeah.
hours are. 9 to 5, 15 minutes. It really is a loading zone.
So after that time, then it's free public parking. So it's,
Well, unless we put the meter back in. I don't know what happened to the meter head there. I'd have to ask Lieutenant Brown. We had a conversation about it back in March or February, but I don't
So-
remember.
I believe when it was taken out when the chamber was there. Or, you know, to allow for 15-minute parking. The chamber, and I think there was another business next to it.
yeah, there was also, it was done for the Bridge Street house, so that people could
Unload.
pull up, get rid of their luggage, and then get parking.
So it already is loading zone, just doesn't have a sign.
Right. Well, except that people can park there for hours and hours, right?
Well, because it doesn't have a sign.
It doesn't have a sign. Yeah, it doesn't have a sign.
So I think the only amendment then that I've heard was it would be a minute, 15-minute parking.
I think, I mean,
Yeah.
seems fine to
What
me.
are
I
the
mean,
other ones that we have?
15-minute, but most of them I think do say 15 minutes.
yeah,
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Such as the one at the Chive.
And what about the meters?
Oh, so
No,
my point in saying that is I think Lester took them.
Well,
Yeah.
well, let's take a step back. We have meters in storage. I understand that. We swap out when we send one to be fixed or something. Do we have 2 meters we can
Yes,
put
Mr.
back?
Steckman, yes.
Yeah, so,
so we could put a meter head in and charge from 5 to 9. Everybody good with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it's, the loading zone is at 7 days or 5 days?
Yeah.
Just 5 days.
Business days.
Yeah.
I thought you said Sunday through Saturday.
Did I say something?
Well, that's
Yes,
what it
it's
says.
Oh, you know, that makes sense, because customers, I mean, it really is about the customers on that block. So yes, I'm sorry, it would be.
So it's a free parking spot right now for people that want to use that business.
No, it's a free
Or
parking spot for
just
anybody
park
who wants
and
to
leave
park
it.
there all day.
Yeah,
First
right.
come, first serve.
That's right.
That's the thing. That's the thing. But if it says loading zone, then they can't stay there all day.
Correct.
Okay.
and if it says loading zone and there's a meter there, if somebody wants to contribute to the meter, well, go for it.
All right, so it sounds like we're ready to. are there any questions on this? So as amended, we'll include the meter. The meter hours will be after the loading zone.
It'll be
hours.
5 to 9.
Lost where I am. Let's see.
So did we vote on that?
No, we haven't voted. I'm just trying to find my place here.
We need a motion.
Yeah, no, I know that. I'm looking for the number.
36.
Was it 36? I thought it was 36.
It's 36.
It's 36. So,
That's what I said.
okay, thank you. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance number 36-2022 on first reading with a public hearing scheduled for December 15th.
Motion on ordinance number 36.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everyone. The next ordinance is ordinance 37-2022. This is an ordinance to amend the Lambertville City zoning ordinances, application fees and escrow deposits. I've talked a little bit about this. I think most of the council knows about it, but I'll just highlight some of the key reasons for this. Our escrow fees in the city haven't been changed, haven't been updated in 15 years according to the construction office. Yeah, at least 15 is I believe what Crystal said. And you know, what I found as mayor is that people come and they submit applications and our escrow fees are what they are. And the construction office has to keep coming back to them to replenish their escrow fees because, you know, over 15 years, their professional fees have increased, right? So, and this is a couple of things, you know, it feels like poor communication. There have been a couple of applicants who have been surprised at what the final cost of their application was, right? And so this kind of heads that sort of thing off at the pass. So that's one thing, and it also creates additional work both for the deputy treasurer and for the construction office when they have to go back to applicants, ask for more money. There's more paperwork involved in paying and getting things backwards and forwards. So there's that as well. So what I asked Crystal to do was to come up with what she thought were appropriate changes to the escrow fees. And this she has done. We did a comparative study of other municipalities in the area and found that, you know, even though there are certain things that vary a little bit depending on how the construction office is how these things are constructed, that generally these are in line with kind of what's out there. And this is part of a project that I've got to kind of just make communication a little bit better for applicants. You know, this coming year, we will ask our professionals to include fee schedules to applicants right up front, so applicants know what they're being charged for, whether it's every phone call or every email, whether, you know, and also to emphasize things like, you know, if you get your application in, you know, complete the first go around, you know, your fees are going to be less because we're not needing to, you know, the professionals are not needing to review and then come back and then you come back. So it's part of a larger effort. I hope to make the construction office a little bit more user friendly and to set more realistic expectations about what costs are up front.
And this, just to clarify, it wasn't just Crystal coming up with numbers, it was reviewing what the actual costs have been.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And in fact, I sat down in a meeting with the professionals and Crystal. We went through all of these numbers. These numbers have been sent to the planning board chair, the zoning board chair, to the professionals to review. So I think we vetted them pretty thoroughly. And I know this feels like a big jump, and but I think it's appropriate to do. So that's where I am on this.
If they do everything correctly, first time, as you said, they will get perhaps money back
Yes.
instead of chasing them.
Are there any other questions about this? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to introduce ordinance 37-2022 on first reading with a public hearing scheduled for December 15th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. Ordinance is in draft form, which, you know, we're still looking to revise the flood damage prevention ordinance, you know, mandating higher state standards. We're still kind of working on this with Ken. We've got the state standards now, and I think we'll be ready to go with this fairly soon. And then we're still just waiting for the film and media.
Yeah, Steve and I submitted that to the state. I followed up with them again, didn't hear back from them at all. You know, it was more of a courtesy to see if they had some as experts and they offered to do this. At the end of the day, if they don't, you know, if they don't have the time to comment on it, so be
Well,
in charge of it.
the majors, we worked on the stumbling block about the quickness of getting an answer if things change on site was a concern that the commission had with other production companies. So they, when we had first gotten this, the original one, they were fine with everything, except for the fact that the chain of command and who makes the final decision, so they have to go back to the council to approve certain extensions of time or other things that come up in a normal shoot, because it stops production. So that's what we focused on mainly.
Yeah, so anyway, we will finish. Either they comment or they don't comment, but we'll get it to
I'll
the.
call them tomorrow for us.
So this is something that would roll over into 2023 because it hasn't been introduced, right?
Well, it could, depending on how quickly you get it, we could conceivably do it this year.
Okay.
We have enough time. If you
No,
introduce December 1st, you'd have enough time.
You have it,
Yeah.
you do it on the 15th
You might have to beg the newspaper
for
a
both
little
of
bit.
these.
Well, and I don't view this as something that has to
No.
happen in 2022.
Just
We'll give you credit in 2023.
It's a
Councilman.
legacy issue.
Yeah, it's a legacy issue.
Over the wall.
We'll be sure to give you credit
There you
whenever it
If
happens.
you don't
go.
like
When the
it,
credits roll.
if you don't like it, you
You
should
may get
die.
your SAG card out of the deal.
Deal.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the second reading and public hearing for code of ordinances here. The first one is the ordinance number 24-2022. This is authorizing and encouraging the electric vehicle supply service equipment and make ready parking spaces. I would note that this was heard at the planning board on November 3rd. They did recommend that we move forward with this. So there's a discussion there, and I believe the vote was unanimous, but don't quote me on that. So they recommended it. Are there any comments from the council before I open this to the public?
I have one question, on the, where am I? I'm on the second page of this ordinance. And it references that it's related to the goals of the master plan. And one of the goals cited is encouraging new public park areas. How does this ordinance encourage public park areas?
Okay, so that was my mistake because I read it as parking areas.
Oh, so maybe we need to just take that goal number 2 reference out.
What I need to do is I'll compare it to actually Mr. Plan to make
Okay.
sure it says parking.
Well, I don't think so, because encourage new public park areas throughout the city for passive and active recreational areas. Then there's
Okay,
another one, seek
Okay.
long-term solutions to problems of parking and traffic congestion.
okay,
So goal number 4 seems correct, goal number 2 seems maybe not correct.
okay,
But I didn't catch that
that's okay.
previously, obviously.
So what happens?
I
Doesn't
think
really-
they're typographical. I don't
Yeah.
think they changed the subject, the substance of what this ordinance is trying to do. So if they're stricken, I think we're fine.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other comments from the council? Or questions?
So just to be clear, we'd be striking goal number 2.
Yes.
That makes sense.
All right, this time I'd like to open this to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak to this? As you know, please state your name and address. You will have 3 minutes to make your remarks or ask your questions.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Paul Stevens, 39 40th Street. Yeah, I've read through the ordinance and I have questions about it. In particular, it covers both public and private use. And when I go through, it's not clear to me with the private use. For example, would people be able to try to get designated parking spots on the street in front of their house to do this sort of thing? Part of it is because there's a catch-all phrase down in one of the sections that repeals all prior ordinances that might be in conflict with this. And it seems like there were a lot of things that circumvented the normal zoning for these electric spaces. So I could conceivably see how people would want to do that. Even if they already had a driveway to get off of, they could have their parking, the unit down on the street, because it also says nothing in this ordinance shall be deemed to preclude private owner from collecting a fee. Okay? And then the question arises whether or not owners that are renters, that rent their units, would put them in to make them more attractive, but then would they require then that their rentee use that space? I think there are a lot of questions about the private part of it more than the public part. And if some of these things start to happen, in fact, it doesn't seem like it helps, according to the master plan, of alleviating parking in town. It actually would seem to me that it would make it even more so, because it'd be potentially taking spaces away from the general population of parking, and with much lower utilization. Okay. So, yeah, I do have concerns with this. I don't see it addressed well in here. And the big concern then is when there's a chapter in there, that item in there that says nothing in the ordinance, I'm sorry, this repeals all prior ordinances. So that, I think we're leaving ourselves wide open there.
Thank you. I'm gonna kick this one over to Bill. So, I mean, the one comment I would make is that this language that comes directly from the state.
A significant amount, it's almost all of it.
Almost all of it. So the private, are you able to address this, Bill?
Yeah, I think there has to be, I don't know how to phrase this, but I think we have to be more specific with what the private concerns. Are we talking like a private parking lot or parking garage? Or are we talking about individual spaces?
All of the above.
Well,
I mean-
then at that point, I would say that it would come down to a planning board decision. We need more information as to what is presented in application of the planning board for that type of development.
But in here, it has some specific, it seemed to me, wordage that circumvented it from having to go to the planning board for exceptions. When I read through there were a lot of cases where it said, this shall be assumed to meet planning boards, that they won't need variances and things like that. So,
Correct, but I think that depending on what we're talking about, there may not be a concern. So for example, in the private owner, like say a single family home owner wants to rent it. In that case, I don't think the scenario where they would require someone, I don't think that's a realistic scenario. They would require the person to use the electric vehicle. To only rent the sun, is that the concern? They
no,
only
no,
rent someone the electric vehicle?
I can give you a couple of different concerns with the private use. Say somebody does have a driveway and already has off-street parking, but they're gonna pay the price to put stuff in, put it down, get a spot on the street because they can get it. Now they've increased the number of parking spaces with their house. Okay, and then the other one is Airbnb, or even Airbnb, all right? They put one in, the owner puts one in because it's a selling point to rent their unit. Okay, but are they only gonna rent it to people that have electric vehicles? Or are they gonna then also rent it to people that don't? Or, and so what's the point?
So I have a question, Bill, because it was my understanding that just because that unit's there doesn't mean that parking space couldn't be used by somebody who didn't have an electric car.
For
Well,
private, for
Yeah, I mean,
private.
I don't, that's where I'm confused because I don't understand how, if it's a private lot and area, like, I don't, that's what I'm not.
Well,
I'm sorry. It's.
Okay, well, forget the lot.
Yeah.
Go back to one where it's just like people request a handicap parking spot.
Yeah.
Okay, my reading of this is somebody could go in and say, oh, I want to put an electric charging port on this right in front of my house. And it's excluded from any real variances or anything else, as long as it meets the way I read this, as long as it met code. And it could be done.
And that's why you're referencing the repealer provision.
Well, that's part of it. I mean, that even on top of it, that makes it,
I think that's the repealer provision in this ordinance is a catch-all, and I think it relates to
electric vehicle charging stations, not parking regulations in general.
It refers to the items in this ordinance. That's the way it
I
reads.
understand, but I don't mean this disrespect, but I don't think it's a reasonable interpretation of the repealer clause in this ordinance to say that, you know, you can, like a handicap parking space, you can put an electric charging station and just have that devoted for private use for someone in a single lot. I don't think that,
Well, then,
that would not be allowed.
then you're gonna run into people that don't have off-street parking, saying, you know, all these people that have off-street parking can do this, but I can't.
Well, you were,
Yeah, I mean, your point is a go. We did one ordinance
it wasn't an ordinance, it was a resolution.
resolution, yes, years ago. And there is at least one or maybe two that are on the street. It's something that I'm concerned about. The ordinance or the resolution does not entitle that person to park in front of that space. So they have a charging port on the street. They don't have a private driveway. You know, multiply that by 200, it's an awkward resolution to evolve that way. So something that the mayor and the council asked us to take a look at, and we're thinking about, you know, options. And there's some interesting ways some cities have done that in Los Angeles and some other places, but this is something that any urban or kind of urban place is struggling with. I'd agree with Mr. Opel, though. I do think that, I mean, the answer is yes. If you have a private driveway, you live up on the hill, you live in town where there's an alleyway and you've got parking, those people are allowed to, on their property, set it up where they have designated their own parking spots to be able to set up a charger. I don't think it's a reasonable interpretation to say, though, that you can put it on the street and that this somehow empowers you to own that spot essentially to, you know, to rent it out to folks.
Well, in Councilman Sanders, there's nothing, from my reading, there's nothing in this ordinance that suggests that somebody can just get part of the public way.
Right.
It's just, it's not in here.
That's why I think with the repeal, is it the repeal provision that makes?
That's what we're worried about, is the repeal provision somehow, yeah. I don't see that, but I understand your concern. But I'm not quite sure that that's what this is envisioning or would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else in the room? Do you have anything online? Okay. Can we wait? Just have someone's joining us.
Bart, do you want to go ahead and ask your question?
Sure, it's Bart Thurber, 53 Lambert Lane. And I just want to point out that this ordinance or this resolution, I'm just noticing there are a number of different issues on the agenda this evening that relate to parking. And I don't really get a sense that we have a holistic plan for the community as it relates to parking, whether it's valet parking or whether it's the ordinance as it relates to the bank parking lot. There are just a number of issues here that I feel that we're taking on piecemeal rather than with a holistic approach. I just wanted to make a comment there.
Thank you. Anyone else?
But for the record, we are required to adopt this, correct?
All right, may I have a motion to close the public comment period on this?
So move.
Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. Is there any further comments or questions from the council on this?
Well, the only question I had is if the definitions of those categories, private and public or commercial, are spelled out in specific at all in definitions. Because private could mean CVS lots private. You know, I have a house that's private, I want to, you know, put one on the street because it's private. That's not.
I note here in section B, public accessible EDSE, is publicly available, for example, park and ride, public parking lots of garages, on-street parking, shopping center parking, non-reserved parking in multiple parking
It says
lots.
on-street parking.
So anyway, it just, I don't know if it's a definition, but it gives, well, it is a definition with examples.
The definition of publicly accessible and private, there are two definitions that are set forth in here. And they're defined terms throughout the ordinance.
If there are no other questions or comments, may I have a motion to adopt on the second reading, ordinance number 28-2022.
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Ordinance carries. Next is ordinance number 29-2022. This is to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter 8, Sections 8 through 24, Bridge Street parking lot, to amend to permit the bank to reserve 3 spaces in the bank parking lot for visitors to the bank during hours of operation. So I think we should be fairly well versed on this one. I'm going to open this up to the public comment period. If anybody has any comment they'd like to share or questions regarding this ordinance, please. Identify yourself.
Mayor, I wasn't aware of it until you mentioned at the last meeting, but the ownership of this lot is not, we do not own it, the bank owns it.
Correct, yeah. It's-
It's an important fact.
It is, and it's worth repeating every time we talk about this. Yeah, the bank owns the lot and they have graciously at some point allowed us to put meters on the lot. So thank you, bank.
Well, we leased it. I think we have some leasing
It's
agreement.
$1, like for
99
100 years or
lease.
something like that, right?
I thought it was a 99-year lease.
Yeah,
The reason I say it, Mr. Thurber's point, I think is well taken, is that we have a significant parking problem in town. There's a different parking elements here. And so I would understand concern. The last one was required, we were required by public law in 2021 to do a ordinance. And this is a little bit different, I would argue, because the bank has asked us and they own this. So it would be very difficult to say no, but his larger point, I think, is a good one,
Right.
which is that we do have parking challenges and a holistic approach to solving that is important.
We have talked, not recently, but in years past, we've talked about doing a parking plan and really thinking about it. I still think that's something that council should consider in the next year or so. It's expensive, it's gonna cost money. And likely the results aren't gonna make nobody happy, but
Right.
we live in a town that was built in a different era and there are consequences of that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think in light of the discussion on the previous ordinance about electric vehicle charging, now we've got 2 different technologies, if you could call it combustion, I guess you can call the internal combustion engine a technology. 2 different technologies of vehicles competing for this limited resource of parking. And I think that's something we need to factor in, and we should have some sort of plan moving forward as to kind of what the rules of engagement are, because I think it could get pretty ugly on a space by space basis.
it sounds like you're volunteering to chair up the subcommittee.
I guess I
So
am.
Yeah,
Just spin me around and point me in the right direction.
I'll happily use them out there.
Okay.
Yeah, I will say, as mayor, 11 months now, I have conversations every week about parking with
I'm sure you do.
residents, every week. And this week I had an email exchange that, I don't know, we exchanged emails 4 or 5 times about a parking question. Once you begin to actually have these conversations, you understand really that there are no easy answers. If there were easy answers, we would have answered them long ago. And every decision that's been made in regards to parking in the city has caused a set of circumstances by which we all live. So, all right, enough of the soapboxing.
Change is great.
Yes. Any other, I forget where we are. We've had the public comment period, right?
Number 36.
Yes,
Is there any,
Motion to close.
Motion to close. We have a motion to close the public. Was there anybody else? Okay, we have a motion to close.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
All in favor of closing?
Aye.
Okay, and then May I have a motion to adopt on second reading ordinance number 29-2022?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Next ordinance is ordinance number 30-2022. This is to amend the Lambertville City Code 2014, Chapter BH3 to permit cottage food operations licensed by the state of New Jersey and the city of Lambertville. Talked about this last time, allow home bakers to make an application to the state of New Jersey for a cottage food operation. This was also reviewed by the planning board on November 3rd, and we have received their blessing. I'm going to vote for the recommendation on this.
Is this another one of the ones we were required to do, or do I misremember that?
There was a state action on it.
Yeah.
But it didn't, this doesn't require us to take action.
Okay, I'm going to open this up to the public. Anyone in the public wish to speak to this? I think we're going to be online. I have a motion to close the public comment
So
period.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you. And are there any other questions or comments from the council on this ordinance? Okay, hearing none, I would ask for a motion to adopt ordinance 30-2022 on second reading.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Just to follow up, after the vote, is I know there are, the state has a very large, what you can and can't do under this. So we should make that into a more readable public and post it on our website so people think that what the restrictions are, because this doesn't really, this is the health end of
Yeah,
side of it.
because we didn't go into that detail because their application isn't with us, it's with the state. So they'd have to make applications with the state before they did that, they have to get zoning approval. So it'd be a zoning permit that they would then take for their application for the state. We
But-
certainly
but-
can link it to the state, put something on our
Yeah,
website to link it, sorry.
Because if they're going for zoning approval, not knowing what they can and can't do, that's another expense that someone will spend to find out they can't do what they want to do. So somewhere where
Yeah,
we
I feel
can,
more comfortable linking it to the state only because that way, if they change the requirements,
that's
we're
fine.
not like constantly looking for that.
Well, if
you know?
someone comes in for a zoning change, we shouldn't proceed until they have all the information they need. So this is zoning officer will say yes, and then we'll come back, oh, the zoning officer, I can do this, and then, oh, I didn't know the state had different rules, so because it's new, I think that it's a great idea, but we have to talk to the construction office and the zoning officer about the process on this one, I think.
Okay. But yeah, I think Cindy's right, though. I mean, if the state requirements are the ones that are at play here, it's incumbent upon the applicant to meet those requirements as part of the zoning application process, right?
Well, I mean, if you read this, or maybe I'm misreading this, but so it looks like in order to get the state license, the applicant would have to have the zoning permit
Mhm.
first
Mhm.
and the health,
Mhm.
county health license.
So they have to have that to upload when they make their application to the state.
So that we have to approve them before the state does.
Yes. Yeah, we have to say that meets our zoning ordinance and the Board of Health has to do an inspection and say that it meets all of the.
But that's separate from, are they making fudge or candy? And like, that's
Absolutely.
that's not our deal, that's the
No,
state's deal.
that's not our deal, right?
Great.
When I first heard about cottage licenses, I thought, oh gosh. One more, because when you have a restaurant that opens, it's very detailed. And it can take 6 months before, they get that going. And so I just thought restaurateurs really kind of know their business and know what is required, but a home baker, because it doesn't sound, I read through it, it doesn't sound like it's like anybody who just bakes and wants to sell. There's, steps you have to jump through.
Well, then we should do something where we can outline the steps they need to take and give them the link.
Yeah, I mean, we'll just make sure that, college license, you need your zoning permit, this is who you contact at Board of Health, and then that's your link for the state.
No, well, what I'm saying is if for the people that, we just should make the information available up front what is and what isn't permitted to do under this ordinance.
Sure.
Not from us, but from the state.
That's why we'll give them the link, because the states will a website will always be up to date with their
That's fine.
requirements.
But they should check with the state first, I would say, to see if what they want to do will fly. and
Yeah, we
then- and
can't,
then
get-
go
I mean,
back.
that's their responsibility. We can't, you know.
We'll try and word it in a way that is user friendly.
Yeah, give them their
That's it.
resources, but like,
That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Right. Any other questions or comments about that? May I have a motion to adopt ordinance number 30-2022 on second reading, please?
We already have that.
What's that?
Yeah, we're
yeah, we
revoting.
already voted.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's right. We're on the
We're just
ballet.
You really
Oh,
mean
gosh,
it.
okay. So now we're. That's right, yes, gosh.
This
Fly
was a
through these
question,
things. Yes,
yeah.
okay.
It's that 2-hour ride from Atlantic City.
So next we are going to consider resolution, and this is resolution 201-2022. It's to authorize a 3-month trial period for valet parking on North Union Street, east of Church Street. So the council has had conversations, I think at least 3 now on this matter. I've met with the owners of Under the Moon and the people who run Status Valet. Incorporated basically, I think, everything that the council was concerned about or had questions about into the resolution. We did ask for in last week's Lambertville Matter feedback from the public. I received 2 emails in favor of this resolution and 1 opposed. So there wasn't a lot of public.
Appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing to do, and I'm glad you suggested it because it'll give you a sense of what's really on people's minds.
Right.
Can you give some flavor around the objection?
The objection was largely about quality of life issues for residents. I'm happy to forward that, but it was largely about the character of town and the what was viewed as a quality of life issue for residents in town.
I have a couple of questions. From 2 spaces, it's gone up to 3 spaces now.
No,
What do you mean now?
it's 2 spaces.
Not in the resolution?
Cindy, where's it say?
I thought it said 2 spaces. We initially talked about 3 spaces and then it went down to 2.
Wait, let me read.
What do you
I'm
say?
sorry, you are correct, Councilman. I don't know how I missed that in my reading here today. It's 2 metered spaces.
Okay,
So, thank you.
now, in some of our discussion, this was going to be a service for the people of Lambertville. Now it's restricted to North Union Street businesses. From when to where?
And how is that going to be monitored? Will it be monitored?
Hang on just a second. So, yeah, Cindy, there were a couple of things that, I'm now catching that there were a couple of changes that I wanted to make to this wording. So, let's see if we can work through this.
Okay.
I missed those when I reread this today. I apologize.
No, that's why we're here.
Yeah, so this is open to all members of the public. It's open to anybody who wants the valet service. So it's not just North Union Street businesses. It's any person who drives up and wants to valet parking. So to valet the car. So it's open to the public.
So just,
So whereas the owners of Under the Moon are managing this program, however,
however, the service will be available to the general public.
general public.
The general public? So there's,
I will just also note that, my conversations, we did go back and forth on a couple of things. They had hoped to start a little earlier on a Sunday, and I suggested that given the church attendance at 11 o'clock, that we actually not start the valet service at 11 o'clock, which would allow people who may be going to church for an 11 o'clock service, those spaces. So I just wanted to note that as well.
Anybody else have anything to say?
yeah.
Oh,
Um,
I don't want to take up all the time.
That's okay. We have nothing but time. So it says, item number 5, under now therefore be resolved. Valet may be required to take a pre-approved route for traveling to and from the Lambertville station.
Yes.
That's, to me, seems a thing that might make a difference to residents, like if you're on the route. We talked about it, but we didn't come up with any.
That's why we put it in May. So the council can at any time, and they've agreed that the council can prescribe the route at any time.
Okay.
That we see that it's necessary.
Okay, yeah.
Go, Bill?
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to add is that normally these kind of things would be done through an ordinance, but I think in my conversations with the mayor and based on his conversations with the potential operators, that it made sense to do this trial run because there's, I think, a lot of fact finding that needs to go into it. And if the problems are encountered early on, the council can act relatively quickly rather than going through the ordinance process and having to repeal, like put regulations in and then repeal them. And that's why the recommendation was to approve this trial portion with a resolution so that those things could be worked through and the council can take actions in the meantime to kind of
Right.
go with what works, for lack of a better phrase.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the only other thing I just kind of a comment, and it's premature. Are we going to, or would we consider, if we decide to move forward and make this an ordinance, would we consider charging a fee to the people who want to run the valet service? Because honestly, it seems to me that the cost of, $252 a month is pretty small compared to, like, would we license them or, they have to buy a permit or something? I'd like to consider that, just because I think they're gonna charge what, like $20,
The valet company.
the valet company, but somebody should, I think there should be some sort of license or agreement with the city to behave a certain way, going forward.
I certainly think that we can consider that. We're not
Yeah.
anywhere close to kind of crafting an ordinance.
Yeah.
It really is just about, I think, leaning into something and taking a little bit of a risk for something which actually could prove quite beneficial to not just the business community, but the people coming into the city.
Couple of questions.
Mhm.
What are we requiring from the valet service as per business registration, insurance, with the state of New Jersey business registration? Because there's a whole lot of tiers in order to, it's just like we're requiring the landlords to get $500,000 worth of insurance. What are we requiring to see that they're registered from the start with the state of New Jersey, registered business, number one? And we have to get proof they have insurance, number two. And what kind of screening are they doing for the drivers, number three?
Bill and I talked a little bit about some of these issues, and I'm gonna let you kind of.
I think when we have an ordinance in place, like I said before, the recommendation was that this is a trial. The city's kind of learning on the fly. We can request that information. I think we discussed that.
Yeah.
But I think if the city decides to go forward with a program like this in the future, we can lay out the specifics in an ordinance and have an agreement with the property owners at the time in accordance with the ordinance that will basically set forth the terms for their operation. Now, I don't think the city has the right to do that just because those regulations aren't codified. So I think with respect to, this individual business and any others that are going to take advantage of this, it's just this business because it's just 2 spaces. I think the city is within its rights to request this. We have this resolution and we should get that information. But I think going forward, the definitive requirements would have to be spelled out in an ordinance.
Well, where is that said anywhere in this resolution? That we're going to require certain information from this company.
That's what Bill was just saying. It doesn't. We don't have the authority to do that.
I don't think we do,
Resolution, but
Councilman.
can
I
request it.
defer to you. I mean, if you'd like to edit, it's up to the council to add that
I
provision
don't
in.
see why we're not treating this business as a real business. If they're presenting themselves as a real business, let's see their business certificate. their insurance that covers liability. God forbid one of these, someone gets in an accident,
Yeah, that's-
you know, I mean, I can say, yeah, they probably got it, but I'm not gonna take that leap.
So,
I'm happy to make that a condition of the resolution, if that makes you feel, if you're concerned about
Well,
that.
it
I
doesn't
mean,
make me
Well-
feel
well,
better, it
no.
makes me feel better to vote for it if I choose to vote for it with more information. I want to make sure that,
so,
I'm not saying it's not a great idea, I think valet parking is probably one of the future things that we should get ready to deal with along with other parking stuff, but I'm very cautious, because
So-
I've seen what happens when,
My only question is, it was my understanding that they, under the moon would be contracting with the valet services. So where would we put that in this?
That was the concern that the mayor and I discussed right now, that the city's not party to that agreement. So we're not really in a position to make those demands. And that's why the language isn't in the resolution, because the city
Okay.
really can't demand that. But as from a practical perspective, if we ask for it, hopefully they can turn that over and that'll alleviate any concerns, but also, you know, this is the council's resolution. If the only way this passes, if that language is in there, then someone's going to have to provide it. That's more of a policy concern than anything else. That wasn't something that I could point to something and say, we can't do this unless they provide that information.
Can I make a suggestion? I think that's helpful advice. If we were to proceed with this, it does allow for a 10-day out. And they don't even start until December 1st. So if we approve this tonight, we could put something into the resolution as a condition of approval to ask for, you know, a business license and what insurance that they have. And then we could review it. I don't feel comfortable having a standard for insurance. I don't know what, you know, what's an appropriate level of insurance, honestly, for something like this. But I think we could ask for that and take a look at it and see if we have a comfort level with what they provide. You know, I look at other ordinances from in other towns. There is a licensing application fee, there's a licensing fee, there's a renewal fee to help, you know, pay for the administration of these kinds of things. And you can also set forth in those the requirements for you know, what you need to see from these folks. But I do think this is a good idea to do a test run. You know, it's a nice opportunity, sort of a pre-rulemaking examination to see what this looks like and how it plays out before you set, you know, in stone something that doesn't work or doesn't make sense or doesn't protect us well enough. So the 10-day out clause, I think, is really important to have in here, which is
So what if we added a number 6 that says something like, the valet company will provide the state of New Jersey business registration and the city with their certificate of insurance with the limits that include liability insurance and workers' compensation. So when we, you know, when we insure with the JIF and you do anything, they give you a standard that they want. And so we know what those standards are, so that, you know, they have to comply with that.
so the question I have for Bill is, during this pilot period where we're really unable to impose much in the way of limitations or requirements, what kind of exposure, if any, does the city have in the event of some mishap? Terrible. I mean, we're not party to this business agreement. We're just allowing it to take place on a trial period. But we don't have we don't have an arrangement. We don't have any skin in this game, you know, in terms of who's liable for something, right?
And that was one of the questions that the mayor and I discussed was, you know, with these 2 parking spaces in particular, it's not city property, they're public rights of way. So there's really, it's not like the city's allowing its property to be used for a certain reason. You know, the city puts in various different kinds of parking and traffic regulations. Doesn't mean that every time there's a fender bender, and I'm, you know, I'm using that as a minor example, but
every time there's a fender bender, the city's liable because they put in no parking within 10 feet of this corner. So there's always the opportunity for somebody driving a vehicle to get into an accident. I would say, here's a lawyer answer, anybody can sue for anything. There's obviously some kind of exposure, but the likelihood for the city to have a high level of exposure where it's not in contract with either of these businesses, and it's not taking some kind of affirmative action, and this isn't a city operated program. The city is essentially, allowing the type of business for a defined period to see if it works for the city. And so I think the exposure level is not incredibly high, but we also, to Councilman Stegman's point, we want to promote responsibility with this and make sure that these businesses are dealing with reputable and responsible valet services. So, I mean, I think that's more the city's purview, that there's, good businesses, and these aren't just, we're not hiring 17-year-old high school kids to run cars for the city. That they're actually a proper business, they're insured, they have vetted drivers, things like that. I think that's more of the city's concern rather than worrying about injury to people. For which the
Well,
city
that-
would be liable.
I agree with your point.
Can we go with Cindy's suggestion?
Morning, Bill.
I just suggested adding a number 6. It said Valley Company will provide the state of New Jersey business registration and provide the city with a certificate of insurance with the limits that include liability insurance and workers' compensation.
If the council's comfortable with that.
Well, the part of that registration is have to be in good standing with the state.
So, but that's not through the business registration. is
No,
it?
but that's part, no,
So how do they,
They-
what do they submit to us to know, so we know that they're in
you
good
have to get
standing?
a certificate of good standing from taxation. I'm sorry, I lived it for 18 years. I lived it for 18 years. This is what we require businesses to do.
I don't know if they're.
I don't know.
They may be. Yeah, I mean, they do a lot of work in Pennsylvania. I don't remember.
They might not even be ready. I'm not saying anything.
Could we
What
say,
they- What they are or they're not.
Business registration.
business registration and certificate of good standing or the equivalent thereof from the state of incorporation?
So here's another wrinkle. How does this affect the valet service that's already operating at the opposite, at the far south end of town? Doesn't, right?
Doesn't, they're on private property. Well, it's their,
No,
I
no,
think-
it isn't.
their,
They're operating on their private, their sand is on their private property. Their cars, I've been down there to actually see where the cars are coming and going. It's a completely separate matter in my mind.
I think it's because they're using city streets. If they wanted to do this without a drop-off point, we couldn't. have
right,
anything to
today,
say.
the only reason this is before us is because they came to ask about the parking meters. So today, anybody can do any valet anywhere they want. Tomorrow, once we pass the
Right,
ordinance,
right.
then that
Okay.
will be different.
Okay, because it's about the parking meters. Got
Not
it.
an ordinance resolution.
No, in the future, when we have an
Ordinance,
ordinance that
yes.
updates, yes.
Yep.
I'm comfortable with those changes, just as long as it's not state specific, just to.
Bill, I'm probably gonna send this to you tomorrow, Jessica.
Well, can you explain that? I don't understand what you mean.
What if they're incorporated in Pennsylvania? They don't
They
have.
can't do
a-
business in New Jersey without registering as a foreign business. It's called foreign
Well,
business.
it does say state of New Jersey business registration, a certificate of good standing with the state of New Jersey or equivalent thereof from the state of origination.
Incorporation.
or
No, that
incorporation,
you can't do business in New Jersey, any business, without registering as a foreign entity. So they have to have a business registration to do business in New Jersey.
Right, it does say that.
Yeah, but the last part
Yeah,
doesn't
the
matter.
certificate of good standing,
No, the last thing he said. Or from some other,
equivalent thereof of state of incorporation.
So they would
it
have
doesn't
to have-
matter where they're incorporated.
They would have to have a certificate of good standing in New Jersey, even if they're incorporated in a different state and doing business here.
Yeah, well, they have to get a business registration certificate from the state, and they register as a foreign, the foreign.
But a certificate of good standing would be available to an entity that is properly registered in New Jersey,
That's it.
but incorporated elsewhere.
That's true, you could, yeah,
Okay.
it's just like a
I wasn't sure,
contract.
but I, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like a contractor coming from New Hope, and they're registered to do business in New Hope. If they come to New Jersey to work, they have to register as a foreign company. So it's just a process. We don't follow a process that the state follows. We're on our own.
Okay, it seems like we've incorporated those changes. I'm gonna ask for one other change, which I changed, I'm not sure.
Okay.
The south of the Presbyterian Church, I would be in favor of removing that clause and putting directly in front of under the moon. I think it's just, yes, the 2 parking spaces directly in front of the restaurant. And I
Mayor,
think that
what number is that? What to?
in the first section.
Okay, with
First
2 even
whereas.
spaces
Yeah,
in front of,
on the east side of the street, directly in front of under the moon.
And so that's like, to just finish my discussion about the state of New Jersey.
Okay,
is that they're gonna have to, they'll have to get a certificate number, you know, I mean, there's a whole thing, you're gonna have to pay, they're gonna have to pay tax. If it's a taxable thing in New Jersey, they're gonna pay tax to the state. It's just the way it is in this state, so.
okay, so just to review the changes, we have 2 metered spaces. We're talking about directly in front of the restaurant, Moon. Under the Moon is managing the program, however, the program will be open to the general public. And then the 2 bits that you added, Cindy,
Yeah.
in number 6.
okay,
If there's no other conversation about this, I would love to have a motion to adopt this resolution as amended to that 201-2022.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Good, thank you, everybody. Good work. Just a couple of updates here. I wanted to let everybody know that we did receive 2 responses from our RFEI from the Clausen property. We received one from Caleb of Caleb's American Restaurant in Pahaska.
Mhm.
He's interested in opening a 50-seat restaurant on the site, and we did receive a proposal from Fisherman's Mark. So those will be, did you put them in? I forget. They went.
if they're in the, there's a Clausen folder in the shared drive. There's, you can see where it says meeting packet, there's a Clausen folder, they've been uploaded into the Clausen folder.
So they're there.
But
I'm
isn't
sorry.
it- But that's for us. What about the public access to those?
The public documents.
So they are, you have 60 days to accept or reject, and after you make your decision, that's when they become a public document, correct?
No, they're public right now.
They're already public.
They're
Yeah,
public.
So
they're public,
we'll
yeah.
get them on the website, you know.
Okay,
But let's, if we're gonna put them on the website, then there needs to be appropriate language so people don't freak out. This is RFEI, request for expressions of interest. We did not go out to bid. We are not necessarily choosing any of these things. We wanted to literally see if there was any interest in this building.
And since we didn't approach it where we could attract, just to go back for a second, attract real estate agents to be able to bring their customers forward, similar to what we talked about adding on 150 Swan Street, is that I think it would behoove us if we do this, go out again, that we make sure that we don't eliminate an industry who works on commissions from bringing somebody forward. And that was, you know, another, so with that, you know, with that in mind, I think we'll get more of a,
And I would just note that this is a starting point, so your
Sure.
point is
No,
well
yeah.
taken. You know, obviously, we're gonna be talking a lot about the Clausen property in the coming months.
Mhm.
You know, we have the RFP out now for planning services, so we're about to throw all the balls in the air. And we'll be having lots of conversation about it, so, but I think your point is well taken, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilwoman, did you have something to add?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I had no questions.
Okay. Well, did you have a comment? Oh, okay, all right.
Because you know I always have questions.
Questions are good. Questions are good. Just a project update. Actually, I don't have much of an update. I was away this week, so I have I stopped by this afternoon and took a look at Swan Creek. The work is progressing. We're on target to finish all the USDA work by Christmas. So the weather holds out. Everything is pretty tightly scheduled at this point. Road work is underway. Washington Street will be done the week after Thanksgiving. So all the road work should be done by December 2nd as well. So they're doing bits and pieces here. We have the schedule at City Hall if anybody's specifically interested in particular areas, but I will be sending out updates to residents as I have, or as I can, as appropriate. I would just like to thank the council and our council members elect for joining me on Saturday for a tour of the facilities here in the city. This was, I think, a morning well spent. I found it very eye-opening in a way. I'm not familiar with these properties, but to go as a group and to share, observations and to listen to, our department heads, librarian, that kind of thing, I think was very instructive. So, in early January, I will start to move this question forward with the council. I do think that there are things that we will need to do next year. Some repairs that need to be made, and we'll begin to have those conversations very early in the year, and really, hopefully, in the first quarter or the first half of the year, really develop hopefully a long-term approach to these sites. So that's going to be a big conversation, and one that we'll have often and in a public forum. Just one other announcement: the street sweeper is finished on December 12th. So please, we'll make sure that everybody knows that. Correspondence, do we have anything, Cindy?
No.
Okay. Announcements, just the convenience center hours, the 19th of November, December 3rd, Wednesday, December 14th, and Saturday, December 17th, convenience center will be open. Electronics recycling is coming up on Saturday, November 19th, from 10 to 1 at the Legion. And electronics only, no microwaves. Now we'll open up the meeting to public comment. If anybody in the room has something to say, please step to the microphone, name, address, and 3 minutes.
Paul Stevens, 39 Quarry Street, just a couple of things real quick. In terms of the valet parking, collecting data is a great idea. Finding out how a system would work. One thing though, we're not going to find out, I don't think, accurately how it's going to impact things traffic wise and that sort of thing, because we're at the time of year where, traffic's down. During the winter, things are kind of dead around here. So just keep that in mind. Also, the cannabis facility down at the end won't be open yet. So we're doing a big traffic study about that. Is this going to be potentially thought about in the traffic study, the valet parking going up and down that way? Just a couple of things to think about. And then finally, I've had to miss a couple of meetings recently for various reasons. Can we please get the Zoom meetings up sooner? There's actually, I can only find 4 out there. The last one was May 5th. It just helps to catch up. The discussion part's important to hear what things are coming down the road. I would like to be able to catch up on it. Minutes don't get passed until well after the fact, and they aren't as complete as the Zoom meetings. I do find them to be of great use. So thank you.
Thank you. I have a point about the valet parking and everything, but it's escaped me.
Honestly, we have talked about, or at least I have thought about the concern, the weather concern, what we're going to see. It's possible that we won't find out enough and we can extend the resolution. We'll just see what happens.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make. Yeah, I mean, December might be busy because of the holidays, but we may actually see what impact there is on the traffic in January and February when it's, well, we'll see.
Cannabis, I think, will have a much bigger impact.
Yes, and that traffic study, I can't give you an update on that. I know that it's still underway. It has not come back to the planning board. But you're on the subcommittee for that, so maybe you could give a very
has-
brief update to
It
the.
hasn't come back to us.
It hasn't come back, so,
Yeah, no, I-
so
Hasn't
that
come back.
application continues to be pending. And we'll certainly, and if we felt as though, that this program was gonna impact Lambert Lane potentially, I think that we would take that into consideration. The traffic study is already underway, so it's based on other criteria.
So it's underway, but Lambert Lane's been under construction for quite a while, so I mean,
Well,
I guess what.
I'm not gonna get into the particulars of it because
All right.
there were yeah, I mean, there were parameters that have been well established by the board, so I'm not gonna try to make an answer where I can't give one. Anybody else in the room?
Yes, you have one on Zoom.
Okay,
And there tonight we have 5 attendees.
thank you. If you would note that for the minutes, please.
Yes, it's Bart Thurber again, 53 Lambert Lane. And I very much wanted to commend the summary that was provided today in the Lambertville Matters about the examination of the various sites and facilities. I think you referred to a museal study, which I have looked at as well. I just wanted to mention again, and I think I'm sounding like a broken record here about holistic examination, because there's a reference there to potential bond to address the deferred maintenance on many of these buildings. I completely understand that, especially with the library, which I'm very familiar with. Once again, I just want to mention, I think it's 2019, the last time that we did a re-examination of the master plan for the city of Lambertville. And so the way that we ended up, in my estimation, purchasing the Clausen property was without comparison to other needs within the city, including our deferred maintenance of these same facilities. It's not as if this has just appeared in the last year or two. So I would strongly recommend that before any bond issue come before the city and for the residents here, is that we have an opportunity to consider, again, the various aspects. As Paul Stevens has mentioned, it's not just about parking, it's also about traffic. There are a lot of different considerations here, that many of which may require capital improvements. And so by looking just once again at only the facilities needs in isolation of other responsibilities that we have to the residents, I would just caution everyone, or at least recommend an approach that looks back at the master plan. Having now looked at the master plan, cited it in many occasions, especially before the planning board, I am also cognizant that it includes a lot of guidelines that don't have, or they're not codified in our ordinances. This is particularly frustrating when it comes to even the passing of resolutions about being bicycle friendly and pedestrian friendly that are not, again, codified within our ordinances. So I apologize. I've been absent for a few meetings, and I don't know that I made the most coherent presentation, but the spirit is there to, again, elevate this to, as much as possible, a holistic approach to the many needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Always appreciate a viewpoint like that. The holistic needs of our community are great. And we must set priorities. For me, as the mayor this coming year, I've talked about this. I talked about this during my campaign. I talked about it repeatedly. I think the facilities in the city need some attention, and we'll see how we get there, right? I mean, I'm well aware of our debt. I'm well aware of the need to be responsible in terms of borrowing. But we will be bonding next year to do road jobs, which are critical, right? Stutterford Street is a mess, so we will have to bond for that. We'll have to bond for a couple of road jobs, and some of these repairs at city facilities have to be made, right? I mean, everybody saw the picture in Lambertville Matters today of the buckets. Just one of several things. I think we've got some serious tripping hazards on some of our city sidewalks. If we're going to ask our residents to be responsible for their sidewalks, I've fallen twice at the library. the sidewalk. I shouldn't fall the second time, because I should have been smart enough to see that, but I wasn't, and I did. So, you know, priorities, I mean, a holistic approach is important. You know, parking is parking, and I would love to say that we're gonna take a holistic approach to parking in the next couple of years. I would like to, but I'm not making any promises about that. So thank you for your comments, Bart, I appreciate it. Are there anyone else in the? No?
No.
All right, may I have a motion to close the public comment period, please?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
At this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.